Bio 2. We're on our last section of Chapter 23. We've taken a look at the specialized tissues, the roots, the stems, and the leaves, and now we're going to look at how transportation of our water and minerals occurs through all portions that we've talked about so far. So this section is titled Transport in Plants. And kind of the driving force behind all this transport, they give a little bit of an overview, and we'll get into each one of these in a little more in depth. Xylem tissue forms a continuous set of tubes that runs from the root through the stems and out into the spongy mesophile of the leaves. So that's kind of showing how it comes through every single part and ends at the leaves. An active transport and root pressure cause water to move from soil into plant roots. So we mentioned that as well. Again, this is just kind of an overview of what's the driving forces behind the transport. Something called capillary action, which we will mention here in a little bit, and transpiration also are needed to transport water and minerals. So here's just kind of a general overview saying that we have our xylem tissue that's forming a continuous set of tubes from the roots all the way to the leaves, and how active transport and root pressure cause the water to move from the soil into the plant roots. And then we're going to look at capillary action and how they're needed to transport water and minerals. So our first question that we're going to ask in this video is, how is water transported throughout a plant? Which again, that was just a little bit of an overview right here. And then the combination, so to answer that question, the combination of root pressure, capillary action, and transpiration provides enough force to move water through the xylem tissue of even the tallest plant. So these three things right here, root pressure, capillary action, and transpiration, are going to be the driving forces of transport inside a plant. And we're going to take a look at how, in order to better understand how these three things are going to work together, we're going to have to take a look at a couple terms that might kind of be a little more chemistry related, but they apply to plants. So we have what's called cohesion versus adhesion. So cohesion is the attraction of molecules of the same substance to each other. So cohesion is the attraction of molecules, so let's say the attraction of two water molecules to each other. And adhesion would be the attraction between unlike molecules, so that'd be water being attracted to CO2. So that's cohesion and adhesion, so we're going to need to know what those means in order to take a look at what is called capillary action. If you remember, you said capillary action. So now cohesion and adhesion are going to play a role in that. So the tendency of water to rise in a thin tube is called capillary action. So simply, that is just what it means. It's water rising inside of a thin tube. So right here you can see, we'll just maybe pretend like this is sequence one after the other here. So we put a thin tube into water and it literally just rises up. So water is attracted to the walls of the tube, so that would be adhesion, the attraction between unlike molecules, and water molecules are attracted to one another, so that's cohesion. So we have cohesion and adhesion together are going to cause capillary action and water moving up a small tube, and again the small tube in the plants being our xylem. And capillary action causes water to move much higher in a narrow tube than a wide tube, so that's kind of going to be our xylem and our phloem are going to be gigantic, they're going to be thinner. And so then tracheids and vessel elements form our hollow connected tubes in a plant. Remember, tracheids are going to make up xylem. And capillary action in these structures causes water to rise well above the level of the ground. So that is kind of our capillary action. In terms of plants, we're not going to actually have a thin tube, but we have xylem that's made out of tracheids and vessel elements. So that's why our water is going to move. Cohesion and adhesion coming together. So that's our first part. We have capillary action. Our next is transpiration. In tall plants, the major force in water transport comes from the evaporation of the water from leaves during transpiration. So I think we mentioned this before, that in order for water to move up, we have to lose it in some places. So when water is lost through transpiration, osmotic pressure, remember osmosis is water moving from an area of high concentration to an area of low concentration, moves water out of the vascular tissue of the leaf. So water loss, we lose water in the plants, so our leaves now are losing water, so therefore it's going to be a low concentration of water up here in the leaves and a high concentration down here in the roots. So what's going to happen is the movement of water out of the leaf is going to pull water upward through the vascular system all the way from the roots. And this process is known as transpirational pull. So it's just simply, we had water up here, we had water down here, so they're in equilibrium, so nothing's really moving. So then water, it's going to be lost up here, going back. As you can see, all these blue arrows mean water loss. And so Now, since we don't have any water up here, it's going to travel from our roots through our stems back into our leaves in a process called transpirational pull. So controlling transpiration, again, this should be a little more review. We're not just always going to let our water leave whenever it wants to. The water content of the leaf is kept relatively constant. So when there is a lot of water, the water pressure in the guard cells is increased and the stomata open, then the excess water is then lost through the open stomata by transpiration. So we mentioned in our section about leaves how we're not just going to let them open whenever they want to. It's a very controlled process, and this is getting more in specific, saying that when there's an excess of water, they will open and they will let water leave. However, when there's not an excess of water, they will not let the water evaporate. Okay, so then going back to kind of, again, a little more review, when there is too much of a dry condition. So when water is scarce, the opposite occurs. Water pressure in the leaf decreases, and the guard cells respond by closing the stomata. So closing the stomata is going to conserve water, but it's going to reduce photosynthesis. And so this reduces further water loss by limiting transpiration. And when too much water is lost, wilting occurs. I think wilting is just kind of the leaf kind of turning brown and dying. And when a leaf wilts, its stomata close and transpiration slows down, and this helps a plant conserve water. So plants will almost kind of kill off a leaf if they have to, because one leaf is easy to make in order to save water to help keep the rest of the plant alive. So that is it for that section. If you have any questions, let me know.